Welcome, welcome. I love that Jill Moakes entry. Welcome, everybody, to Stone Fruit Roll Up. This is your weekly Thursday live show, all about anything and everything. You are watching the show about building the show that you're watching right now. This is our adventure of hosting a live show and experimenting with content and figuring it out as we go along. And that's why I am unbelievably excited to join in conversation with our very special guest today, Jennifer Thornton from 304 Coaching. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Jennifer, but first, I'm going to tell you why I really need to tap into her business brilliance today. And that is that when you are creating a show like this or a project that's amplifying your business efforts and putting you out there and getting you visibility, which is the point of the whole dang thing, there are a lot of moving parts. It's like herding kittens. You can only imagine from the project management standpoint all the different things that have to be taken care of to execute a live show week after week after week. And I'm not sharing that with you because I want you to be impressed, although, I am sharing this with you because, dang, this is the part where you need a team. There is no better team builder I've ever seen in my 5 decades of watching people create work environments and lead teams like my near and dear client, Jennifer Thornton, who is our guest here today. She has this uncanny ability to create a magnifying centrifugal force of creativity and innovation and curiosity amongst a group of high performing professionals who are scattered all over the country. And I want to know how she does it. And I want to follow in her disruptor style. So I am so excited. Jill is here in the comments coming in from merry old England. I think she just likes to hear me say, welcome, welcome in her voice. So without further ado, as we pop off here in the comments, I'm going to ask our executive producer and intergalactic intern Saturn Gunter to bring JT to the screen. Welcome, JT.
Hey, hello. Thanks for having me today.
Oh my God, girl. I am so excited. Here's why. I've never seen anybody be able to rally a performance level gold standard team like you have and do it without any fear based language, with a healthy culture, with a collaborative environment. I'm so excited to be part of your team, and I can't wait to learn like what's your secret sauce and how you do the thing. But first, let's tell the folks like how you come about how you came about this chops. How'd you get these chops, girl? Or your credibility? You are an executive coach. You are a consultant. You help large, like big name. I don't know how many of those names you might want to drop. Clients with on an individual basis, and then also from a company-wide talent strategy perspective, build the kind of teams that can deliver on any business vision or goal. You've been doing that under your own shingle for the last 5 years. Tell us a little bit about how you decided to do it differently. I'd love to hear your story about how you are disrupting leadership and the way we've always done it.
Oh, so where to start? So I think where to start is just very early on, my dream in life, because we all have dreams, was to work in the mall. And I had big dreams. Yeah. I wanted to work at the mall. I mean, who didn't? As I like to age myself and say, I worked at the mall before the internet. So this is when you actually like helped people. And I mean, it was like if you didn't have what they wanted, you found something else. There was no like getting on the internet and just ordering it for them. You had to sell something else to them. So I love the energy. I love the people. What I didn't know at that time when I was young is that I was learning leadership really early in life. If you're running a store, sometimes when we walk into a restaurant or into a mall store, or any of those type of services, what we don't realize is those people are leading multi-million-dollar businesses. And they are making decisions in the moment all day, every day. And so from a very early age, I had to learn how to hire people, how to schedule, how to deal with conflict, how to give feedback, because we had to make our numbers every night too. We had to make sure all of those KPIs were being hit. I was probably one of the only people in high school that understood what KPIs were and how to pull different levers to make all those numbers come together.
And that's the first question I want to ask you. How old, when you say very young, how old were you the first time you were like writing a schedule or just like having to train somebody? What were you like 16, 17?
Probably not that young, definitely working, that young. I probably got, as we would say back in the days, keys to the store, where I had to do all of that. Gosh, I think it was the summer before my senior year. So yeah, I'd probably been 17. Wasn't necessarily doing schedules, but I was responsible for making sure we closed everything out at night, made our numbers, all of those things. Gosh, it's crazy. That probably wouldn't happen in today's world. But yeah, I was probably too young to have that responsibility, but hey, why not?
I don't know. People, entrepreneur, like people are hiring their kids to run their social media platform. Once you start scooping ice cream, suddenly, you have the keys to the store too. It seems like if you see someone who is just kind of taking responsibility and entrepreneurially spirited, you just start giving them a chance, and that's how we build our careers. Working in Malso for real.
That's right. Building
Tony's
coming
at a young age. Exactly. Tony's coming in the comments and wants to know what your favorite mall treats are. Mine were Orange Julius.
Oh my gosh, I was going to say Orange Julius for sure. But I'll never forget when Auntie Anne's came online, and girl, that mall smelled so good, and all that cinnamon and sugar, and yeah. So I did love me some Auntie Anne's pretzels when they first started opening. I remember our first one at this mall I was at. It was a big deal.
I'm not going to lie, I got one 2 weeks ago.
I still walk by one of our mall here, and I'm like, oh, it takes me back to the day because it smells so good.
I know, that's how I feel with Orange Julius. I worked in a 1-hour photo, so talk about things you don't do anymore.
Yeah, no.
printing those out. Okay, awesome. So taking us back to these early days in your retail and then climbing your way in that corporate ladder of a very traditional job trajectory, when did you start to notice that maybe leadership needed some fixing, as we say?
Yeah. So I'll never forget when a peer of mine got a job that I thought that I would have been great for. And it was, later on my career, and it was like a crossroads for me. It was, some of those best gifts are things that we don't get. And that was a best gift for me that I did not get. And what I started, and at the time when I was not happy at all about this, my supervisor said, there's something else. There's something else I think you'd be better at. And I was like, well, what is that? She's like, I'm not ready to tell you. So of course I'm like so mad, so frustrated. I'm sure in my mind said and did horrible things in my mind. But what I was realizing, and what my incredible leader at the time was realizing, is that I didn't lead the way other people led, which had made me successful to a point, but wasn't going to make me successful in that next level. So I am not a competitive person. I'm just not. And I love to be number one, and I love to be the best, and I love to win. All of that is true, but I don't do it just because I can do it. I do it because I think it's fun to do that with a team of people, and it's great to create something with people. And so in the land of operations where you're chasing numbers, I had to really be more of just a kind of a a KPI, have to hit this. And I leaned more towards, let's rally this group, let's build a team. And oh, by the way, we also were number one too. And so I just came at it from a different direction. And so what that leader was, leading me towards was moving my career from an operations standpoint to HR, which is what I did midstream in that time period of my career. Is I, went to a completely different side of the business, because it was just naturally what I did well, was thinking about recruitment, hiring the right people, making the right people work together. How do you curate a group of people that are different but yet really enjoy each other? And that's ended up in HR. And I was a little bit of a disruptor in that area too, because I wasn't classically trained. So I wasn't a policy police girl. I wasn't like, well, the law says that. And I'm like, well, let's just see what we could do within the, kind of the borders I was given. And so I always thought about, how do we drive the business through the people? And with that combination of some HR experience and operations, I kind of created this odd piece that I am, and why I look at things a little differently.
Odd piece that you are is the piece that I love. I love how you think. And you've taught me, you've taught me you really have taught me so much about how to talk to people, how to engage with other team members. You have a really strong neuroscience background, and you're really passionate about going into human behavior and skill building, and you're never ceaselessly educating yourself on what makes us better as humans, so that we can be better as humans at work. And I'd love to show the folks at home what I'm talking about. So I have a little show and tell. Are you up for it?
I think so. This is a surprise. So I'm anxiously awaiting what the surprise might be.
I promise there's nothing you haven't seen here before. So
okay.
We're going to do a little slideshow. The point of the show is to show you how I've experienced your leadership on the team and what my journey was like to be a part of this. And then I want to come back around in the back end of that show and just deconstruct your perspective of this, and teachable moments for other folks who really want to build a team that is, as you said, based in performance rather than competition, or as Jillian and I like to say, collaboration over competition. So I put together a little sideshow to tell my story of you and me and our whirlwind romance. When we started working together, it had been pretty much a few years in between our first project and then the next thing we did. So I came on board in the summer, and you brought me on board to write emails for 304 Coaching to keep your email list going. I encourage everyone to visit 304coaching.com and get on that mailing list, because these emails are chef's kiss, if I do say so myself. And then about 6 months into that project, you and I only worked solo, one-on-one, just client on client, a very normal kind of copywriter or consultant and client relationship. And then you invited me to join you and Team 304 in Texas, where you live, and have a team retreat. And we didn't know each other at all. And I thought that this was a really interesting way to storytell your leadership style without just talking about it. So let's do a show and tell. Saturn, can you advance easily? Okay. All right. That's right. We're not from Texas. Everyone, with the exception of Jody, was really scattered kind of across the country. So we didn't share a geographical bond. We hadn't had a lot of time together to work as a team. And then all of a sudden we're thrown into this really intimate environment. But it was probably the most powerful team building experience that I've ever had. And I've been through nonprofit retreats and, conferences, etc., because you really brought us together to get to know each other in a powerful way. So you took us to your house that you're building, and we got to see the framework of all that. I mean, these are people who did not know each other the day before. And then we drove on up to the Eagle of the Canyons, which was an incredible resort right in Hill Country, near where my grandmother is from. And we started to work together in a workshop style environment. We had a little bit of team building exercises, but we did business planning and we worked on projects and we planned an initiative. And then you did this really amazing thing where you asked each one of us to put forth a presentation to showcase our skills and our talents. This piece here is so important because this is the place where all of us learned what the other person is good at. And as far as I've been working for you, you've never asked us to not do the things that we're really good at. So here, Jody showed us how to create a really awesome slide presentation, and Krista was showing us her game, which was really, really cool. I'll pause here for a second and see if you want to respond to this piece, JT, about how you asked why you asked us to do this piece. How were you motivated? How was this creating a team for you?
This was so fun. I learned so much. This is like, I think always when we do something, you look back at these moments where you're like, that moment was, like a leapfrog moment. Like we all leapt together during this moment. And what I wanted to do here is, all of you were, no one knew each other. I knew all of you individually, and I knew everyone had so much they were bringing to the table, but none of you knew what the other person was great at. And I didn't fully know. And so the goal here was, tell us what you're really freaking awesome at and just show us. And so everyone did that. It was so cool. We learned so many things and we learned about each other and laughed. We did a ton of laughing during this exercise. But we got to really understand each other for what we're amazing at instead of those horrible, they just make me crazy. What are you good at? What do you want to work on? Like all that stuff. We just were like, here's where we're awesome. And I'd like to be more awesome where I'm awesome. And how do I do more of what I'm really great at? And that was the goal of this. And that is always the goal when I work and assemble teams, is bringing in people who have unique talents that no one else has and keeping them in their zone of genius, keeping them doing what they do, which is why we have, a bigger team that are all entrepreneurs in their own right, instead of like two generalists who try to do everything. That just doesn't work for me. I like people to show up every day and be just fantastic. And, from a neuroscience standpoint, this brings all those good chemicals, right? So when we're talking about what we're proud of, what we're good at, what we do, our brain releases incredible like happy hormones, which create this opportunity for us to hear things and see things and understand each other. And it creates an emotional and chemical connection. And this was so fun. Like I'm glad that this was as fun for you as it was for me and that you bring it up here today. And a lot of these ideas we still we started using. So Krista in the yellow there, she was showing all these games she had made, and it sparked all these ideas for me. And we've been making all different types of actual games, not only for our own workshops, the workshops we host at 304, but also for clients. So we've been making all of these custom design games for organizations to use to help teach culture, values, those types of things. But that idea came from this, along with a million other ideas that came from this experience.
And I'll say the thing that was so remarkable about this for me now in retrospect is that there isn't a shadow of a doubt who does what and does what excellently on the team. I don't live in ambiguity of like, well, we need a presentation, but I'm not really sure who does that piece. And I think we spend a lot of time kind of when you're on a team in confusion of to whose roles and responsible. When they say stay in your lane, what does that actually mean? But by doing this and not presenting it as like, I specialize in blah, 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 which you'll never remember, this show and tell solidified, again, everyone's zones of genius. I think it also should be noted, because it's so powerful, JT, is that you don't ask anyone to work outside of this. I don't have to write emails and then do the part I can't stand, which is to load it into the software and schedule it. Like I just don't, that's not a place I enjoy spending my time. And you've never once asked me to do that. You have an admin person who really likes the mechanics of all that. So because you've been able to coordinate us in a communication circle where we know each other and trust each other, I don't have to be the one who owns the entire workflow. Can you speak a little to that?
Yeah, that again allows us to do what we're really good at. And every piece of your business, there is someone out there that is good at it and wants to do it. You just have to take the time to look for it. And it's small things that make the difference. And so, for example, if Rebecca writes copy, Rebecca isn't, she does it and looks at it. And I mean, you never send me anything that's like not put together. But then we have Chelsea on our team who has this magic eye as an editor. I don't know what kind of superpower she was given at her birth, but that woman can edit like no one's business. And she reads those emails and she'll read them with a fresh eye because you and I do them and we're like, oh, this sounds great. And she's like, this makes no sense. And
It's not even a sentence.
we're like, oh, thanks. And so she reads them with a fresh eye, just like someone on our email list would. She gives us feedback. And sometimes she's like, oh, I love this. Great job. Or she's like, oh, this doesn't
Or
make
she'll
any
ask
sense.
a question, or she'll say, I learned something today, which is actually very cool to see come to life.
Yeah. And then she edits it. And then she's very techie and she enjoys the technology piece of it. She edits, she gives us feedback, she gets questions answered, and then she loads it into the system and off it goes. And so it allows, you to do what you do best, create copy. It allows her to do what she does best, is this fresh eye and mind, and then use her technical skills. And it all comes together, and knock on wood, we haven't missed an email yet.
We haven't missed an email yet. And also, it doesn't tie up my bandwidth to have something that's been like publishing ready. I mean, I really don't require a lot of edits in general, but knowing that there's someone else has their eye on that frees me up to then, you know, position a new podcast or create a list building campaign or to meet with you for strategy because I'm not bogged down in all my time, proofing things or hiring a proofer. And it just like creates this beautiful ecosystem.
Yeah.
You said something so interesting, which I just am fascinated with, is I don't hire generalists. I bring in specialists who are entrepreneurs in their own right, and we all work together simpatico. This is where I think your disruptive team building creates an environment for innovation, resilience, and creativity. But it's a big lift. Like you can't just like put an ad out and just like hire the next marketing person fresh out of college. You've got to really curate who your people are. And this speaks to your talent with talent strategy.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that, JT.
Yeah. So I think that, in a small business, you can hire a few people that wear a lot of hats, and you will be disappointed in them and they will be disappointed in their own performance, 50% of the time. Because if you're two job descriptions into one job, chances are you can't hire two people in one body. You got to hire someone who's good at one or the other, and they'll hobble through the other part until your business has grown enough to hire someone to take that, or until they get sick of not doing stuff they don't want to do and they find a new job. And so it's just how it works. And I think we've all been in those positions where we were doing jobs that we didn't like, we weren't good at it, and we just, it just hurts. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted everyone to be really awesome. And so that's what we've done. We've hired experts, and I've brought, especially this trip, it was about bringing all these experts together, because not only do I want to have a great organization and, people love the work we produce, because gosh, we have like the most brilliant minds that come together to produce the work that we do. But I also wanted to champion your own success. And I think that's what leaders in corporate America don't understand that they have the opportunity to do, is every single person on the team, I want them to be as successful as they ever dreamed they might be. And to do that, I have to champion them. I have to say, hey, if you want this, here's someone over here. And after this, kind of this fun weekend trip we took, the thing that brought me the most joy is that some of you started to work on your own projects outside of 304 together. And that was like, just made me so happy that
Full circle.
this moment allowed you to grow who you wanted to be and who you wanted to be for your career, which I think is just amazing. But too often leaders are too worried about their own success to champion the success of others. And I know the more successful each of you are, the more you're going to want to work and do great things for 304.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. You mean like this?
Oh, and my heart.
Yeah, I know.
It's a cool story.
This is a very cool story, and it speaks to one, you highlighting and championing people's work. It speaks to this kind of collaboration in a kind of client work that is so recognized and seen. And girl, I don't need to tell you about retention. Like, this is the most loyal team member you're ever going to have because this is how you make her feel. Tell us the story.
So one of our incredible clients is a Natural Diamond Council, and they are a beautiful organization that promotes the sale of natural diamonds, but really promotes the sustainability and how diamonds give back, and the countries that where there are children getting free education, free healthcare. Anyhow, I could go on and on, but we are their education vendor, so we create all of their education. And Anne is incredible. Her superpower is creating education inside of Articulate 360, which is a very specific software. I don't even know how to turn the software on. I don't even know how to do it. She is so good at it. And so the Natural Diamond Council, after we did our first round of education, delivered it to them. They sent a gift to both myself and to Anne. And it was this beautiful, huge coffee table book. In fact, I have mine right here. My gift is right here. And, but also sent her one. And I think the thing I loved about this is, I'm very clear that it's not just me, that there are a whole bunch of us incredibly talented people pulling this together. And I use your names and talk about your names. And so Anne got the gift, and this is Anne being Anne and her big heart and teary after getting a gift from our client.
You made her feel so seen. Like that, I didn't know her at all, and this was something that deeply impacted everybody. So excellent segue. And then, we all kind of sat down and got to work. JT, what was your experience like leading, a room of 8 people and this cat? Whatever cat that is, leading a room of 8 people that hadn't worked together before. Did you feel like the work actually got done?
Yeah, I think the work got done. And I think for me, what the work was bringing the team together, helping you bond, helping you think about how you wanted to come together, sharing ideas, building something bigger than any of us could have built individually with our own ideas. And there wasn't like a big, we must accomplish these 4 things or this has failed. It was something you can't necessarily put on a checklist. For me, this was really about the personal connections of building a team and bringing a team together. And that's why these moments are so important. And, when these moments become overly curated, they lose that connection, and the emotions of an experience is what creates the memories of the experience. So that's what, I wanted to do. And obviously from our conversation today, I created the emotions of the memories, which creates the results.
We sure did.
Oh, look at you and Jen.
Yeah, man. Look at how cute we are. Oops, we're there twice. It's the nice note twice. Sorry, JT. Blondes have more fun. It did actually create an emotional connection between us. And before anyone kind of out there in the studio audience thinks, well, yeah, of course, you take them to a fancy retreat in the middle of hill country, and then, you make them cry and you create all these wonderful experiences
and provide wine.
I don't have a wine picture, but we're getting more exciting as we go on. So there was a lot of work, and then there was a lot of play for those of us who were lucky enough to stick around, you gave us a memory of a lifetime to see your delightful cousin and his talented band that people may have heard of, like really big deal called Lone Star. And here we all are, like backstage on the tour bus, like you just included everybody, and it was just such a wonderful bonding experience. Here's our selfie on the tour bus. I've never been on a tour bus before.
Yeah.
And as you know, I'd never heard of this band before, and now I'm a huge fan. They rocked it. They absolutely killed it.
Mm-hmm.
To your point earlier in the broadcast about like how now we're collaborating together on our own projects, here's just two examples. Jody's coming on this show to show us how to do a slide makeover. If she's watching this one, she's probably cringing at this slide presentation right now. But it has had such a, I mean, this is literally 18 months later that people are coming together, that Jody and I are doing an independent project and coming together. So we are coming to the end of my slide presentation, so I don't want to keep this on too long, but I do want to encourage folks at home to please visit 304 Coaching at 304.com to get into this delicious podcast, Let's Fix Leadership, where the topics are fire and really does say the quiet part out loud about how we lead teams, and also to connect with you on LinkedIn. So those are your promos, unless anything else you want to throw out there.
No, that's great. Thank you for that.
You're absolutely welcome. So JT, now that we've kind of walked through our experience on that retreat and we've talked about how you've built this team, I'd love for some kind of how-to coaching, because again, this is the show about building the show that you're watching right now. I am a disaster starting this team out. I have a pretty strong ability to, charisma my way around engaging people with my projects, and people genuinely really like working with me. But I get very, very stuck in like, well, if I haven't planned it out way in advance, then I'm just going to put out that fire. And then what happens is I have a team that's like kind of disjointed, and I'm not really leading. I'm just doing the things, and then I'm not really growing. So, girl, help a sister out. How would you advise people who have been solopreneurs for 20 years and now have to activate some sort of team building because they're growing? Question mark.
Where to start? So I think the first thing to do is really get clear on what things would elevate your business. And I think that's what happens. Like someone's in their business, they may be overwhelmed. They know they need help, but they don't know what to do, or like they don't know where to start. And so they just throw something out there, or they meet someone's cousin's brother's sister's uncle and they're like, oh yeah, you'll do. And they don't really put the thought into what the team, each person would be doing. Why would they be doing it? How does that intersect? And I think that's really the first work, is really deciding the skills that you need to onboard, because that will lead you to the person you need to hire. And it's not the glamorous part of the work, but it's the work that matters. And
are we pushing? Sorry, JT.
No, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, are we pushing back on the idea of hiring for culture?
I think you can do both in some ways.
Say more about that.
So I can hire someone that is an amazing culture fit, but if they can't do the work they were hired to do, they're not going to be happy. They might enjoy working with the two of us and everyone else on the team, but they're like, every day I feel like a failure. Like you have to think about both things. Are there positions where you can hire someone from a culture and develop and train them? Absolutely. There's those types of situations too. But, in this kind of mind, like we'll kind of think about it as you're hiring someone that's maybe mid to somewhere else in their career, mid and on up. You're hiring someone who's a culture fit, but also someone who can bring the skills to the conversation. And it's not only about what we do, but it's how we do it. And so I just like I can hire someone who may be the best at whatever I've hired them to do, but they're disruptive, they're rude, they don't gel with the team, they make a team who's always gone along so well start to fracture. Well, that can't happen either. And so it's a fine balance between finding someone who has the skills that you need to hire and will work in a way in which elevates the team versus decreasing the team alignment.
This reminds me of your idea or your concept that you call the talent cliff. So I guess my question is on the reverse end of how do I get started, and really ask what happens if I don't do that? What happens if I just keep plugging along, in my own putting out fires solopreneur style, and I never really rally any kind of a team? From a small business perspective, and then I'd love to see you kind of blow out the, kind of open up the aperture a little bit and talk about companies that have like 400 employees or 500 employees. What happens if you don't create create this environment of curiosity and collaboration, and you just kind of work in a silo?
So in most organizations, the goal is to grow. And that's kind of where most people are, especially as a solo entrepreneur. You're growing your business. Some people are at where they want to be, and that's great, and that's kind of a different strategy. The talent cliff really speaks to companies who are growing and trying to scale. And what happens is the company gets that momentum because the right people are in the right seats and everyone's doing great things, and their skill is a little bit higher than what they actually do. And so you're able to grow into that space, right? That white space between skill and need. Your company's growing into that. And what happens is individuals start to focus on the widget. They focus on transportation. They like whatever this stuff, and they don't put the same amount of attention into the team. But then what happens is if your team is not growing faster than your business is growing, and I mean intellectually and skill and competency wise, then what will happen is eventually the business will catch up to their skill set. And then there's a wall. Or the worst situations is when the business kind of out succeeds what that team can do. And all of a sudden the business starts to go south. And in those situations, if you're not investing as much into your team as you are investing into growing your service model or your widget, then you'll hit the talent cliff, and your best people will be your first to go because they're not going to want to be around for the ship. Like they're like, oh, there's cracks in the ship, I'm finding a new one. So your best people go first. Then the next people start trying to row, and they were already overtaxed and maxed. So now they're really maxed. And so all of a sudden, everyone's kind of going off that cliff. And then right behind it is your business.
Right behind. I love the way your voice trailed off like that was a fairy tale. Have you ever seen a situation where that happened and the business outgrew the founder?
Oh yeah, the business outgrows the founder all the time, and it's heartbreaking. It's also just as heartbreaking when someone helped start the company. They were employee number 1 or 2, and then the business outgrows them, and everyone's like, what do we do with him? He's great. We love him. Right. And they do really mean things like just put him in the corner. And, and that's, I think, some of the cruelest things you can do. And so that all does happen, happens all the time. Again, it's heartbreaking. So in those situations, as a founder, as a leader, you have to know, again, where you're really good. And at some point, at times, a founder needs to step aside to continue to do what makes them great, continue to do their best work, and hire someone whose best work is leading the organization. And, we see that out there. Jeff Bezos, he left Amazon. He's like, I'm maxed out. I don't think I have much left to give. And he left as a CEO, left and to do other projects, but found a great replacement and has someone else leading the company he founded. And, there's stories like that all over the place. But as a leader, stepping aside and staying in your zone, like when you grow a business, it's like, I can do this and I'm trying this. And then all of a sudden it just keeps growing, but the amount that you're not loving grows too. And so you've got to kind of clean that up, go do what you're good at, and hire someone to do the stuff that you're just not meant to do. And that's okay.
And that's okay. But that takes a lot of guts to make a decision like that, which pivots us into the top. My favorite thing that you talk about, which I think is the way you are the most disruptive, is your absolute assertion that fuck fear. Like fear, fear is a thing that is ruining everything, and fear-based language is a strong demotivator, and you have all the neuroscience behind that. Fear of being irrelevant or no longer needed, I'm sure, keeps founders from leaving when the business has outpaced them. Let's get into fear, because this has influenced almost every aspect of my professional development, is understanding how fear works in the brain. And I talk about it all the time. If you've seen even more than one episode of this show, you've heard me talk about fear and how it's mutually exclusive with innovation. So, girl, let's get into it about fear. How did you first see it, like its toxic fingers take a chokehold in a previously healthy business scenario?
So it happens when leaders get a little wobbly. I would say, we're getting a little wobbly here. We're getting outside of our zone of genius. We're doing stuff we're not good at. We're getting a little wobbly. Let's upright. Let's get back to where we're good. So, fear is an interesting thing. It is just a chemical reaction. We all have it. You cannot stop it, but you can learn to recognize and manage it. It's how we stay alive. If we didn't have some sort of fear mechanism, we would be jumping off buildings. We'd be thinking we could fly. Like, we'd be doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Like, thank goodness that we have fear in our bodies. But because it's just a chemical reaction, your body doesn't always understand, the difference between getting in trouble during a presentation and, a snake on your leg or something crazy like that. Like, it's just all fear.
What a Texas analogy.
I know, right?
A rattlesnake cleaning up your boot.
That's right. It's just rattlesnake. It's fine. There's anti-venom for that. It's fine. So anyhow, that fear comes and starts to mess with us. And the higher our fear gets, the less control in that moment we have of our emotions, the less innovation. It shuts down learning. It shuts down our ability to hear. And it really is, the higher the fear, the lower everything you want happening. I mean, you just turn it off. And I watch people do it day after day after day. And it's sad, and it's tough, and it's what kills businesses. It's fear. And, if the business gets a little bumpy, then the leaders get a little cranky, and then all of a sudden it's everyone else's problem. And then all of a sudden everyone's in fear, and no one can figure out how to fix a business because everyone's running around in fear. So they don't have access to the parts of their brain that could actually fix the business. And, even as a business owner, some months and years are better than others. And I have to not respond to the fear of that. I have to say, well, this quarter's been quiet, but every other quarter's been great. There's a good chance next quarter is going to be great. Because what that does is it allows me to stay in creativity. It allows me to say, okay, then what's next? If I'm not in fear of the business, then I have the capacity to think about what is next and actually do things that drive the business versus hide and shake in the corner and do nothing. So fear is just, we could do a 4-hour show on fear. And
we could do a 4-hour show on fear for sure. Zach is in the comments. I'm super excited Zach is here because he's a born team leader, and he's very it's very innovative in the way that he approaches things. So I'm super excited for him to learn from you today. And his question is, in your opinion, which is more powerful, the fear of losing or the love of winning? What a masculine question.
Oh, it is. I love someone who makes me think. So thank you for making me think. I think what is more powerful is fear. Because, we can't love winning if we're in fear that the next time we'll lose. And we can't enjoy the moment if our fear is like, oh, well, how in the world am I going to top this? Or, oh my gosh, everyone's going to think I'm going to perform this way every day. And so fear can take away the love of winning. So fear, unfortunately, in my viewpoint, fear trumps everything and what is most powerful. And that's why the importance of managing it is just everything.
Let's ask the question is, well, first of all, I'll say that Jill chimes in that fear crushes creativity. We'll get that up there, which I agree. Let's ask the real question though, JT. What are we afraid of? What is the fear? What are we afraid of?
I think that's different for everybody. Everyone has their own fear. I mean, if you go back and really think about it from a science perspective or from, evolution perspective, we were in fear of being alone, because we really would die alone. I mean, we lived in tribes, we worked in groups, we have family nucleuses today, though in today's world, because we have things like, Grubhub and Amazon delivery, we don't have to live with multiple people in one household. Because back in the day, you needed everyone to participate. Everything was a team. You stayed alive for the team. If you were kicked out of your tribe, you couldn't provide shelter, find water, food, harvest. Like, it would have been very hard to do all of that as a single individual. And so I think that kind of sparks our fear, especially in the workplace, the fear of getting in trouble, the fear of getting laid off, the fear of getting fired, because that's getting kicked out of your tribe. And if you don't have a paycheck, it's hard to provide shelter and food for yourself and whoever you consider the family that lives with you. And so I think that's kind of, the basis of all of that. And what we're all in fear of is really survival at its most basic level.
Nick Stoggerberg from Black Swan Real Estate says that every conversation is a lobby for one of three things: safety, connection, and control.
Yeah.
And that's it. If you can just understand that every conversation is from that space, they can help you navigate fear. But I also say I think we come by our fear honestly. Like if I had a penny for every entrepreneur that kind of came across my desk, shall we say, we had a conversation. So few of them are actually embracing entrepreneurship because they have a problem to solve or a disruption for the industry, or they've got something that they're doing uniquely. Most people are running away from bad bosses, or running away from shitty corporate environments. Like that. This is an opportunity, I think, to really kind of, give the finger to the old style of leadership that you're so effective at fixing. Like, why was fear-based leadership so prevalent? And it just kind of gave us all PTSD. And now you have to be out here disrupting, saying, lead with curiosity, build a high-performing team, when that should have been obvious since day one. How did this situation happen for us here in modern day America?
Yeah. So most of the leadership techniques that we've been taught, and it's been passed down through generation, were based in really the Industrial Revolution. And it was everyone did the same job, and you got promoted to the supervisor because you were the best at doing that one job. As a worker, employee, but really at that point, a worker, you didn't have access to information. So it was really easy. Again, go back to those three things, right? Control. It was very easy for an organization to control a workforce because people didn't have access to information. And so whatever they were told was something they had to believe to be true. Owners or bosses, leaders, many of them got really good at selling whatever story was true. And as time moved on, people, and again, back then there was only very limited to how many jobs you could have. And today's world, if you can think of a job, you can make money do it. There are infinite ways to make a dollar in today's world. There's also more information than any of us need, right? So we can verify, we can make our own decisions. And so leading in a way with high control, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm the boss, you're not, which worked in a factory situation with what people had access to, and based on their own limited ability to, do something else because of the jobs that were available. You fast forward that in today's world where people have the ability to do whatever they want. They have the ability to get the information. You have to, you have to be truth telling. You have to do all this stuff because we have access to information. So we can't lead in that controlling way we used to lead. We also didn't know anything about the brain back then, and now we do. And so there's so much around language and fear that we now know. And we know like just a little drop in the bucket of what I know we're going to know over the next 50 years about the brain and how to work with it. But that evolution of how we live has to change how we work. And, running away from bad bosses, I have so many people say, no one wants to work anymore. And I'm like, oh, no, that's not true. People want to work. They don't want to work for you.
I've heard a lot of versions of that. They don't want to work for blank, blank, and blank, but that's the most hits you where you live articulation of it.
Nope,
they don't want to work for you.
They don't want to work for you. And that's the thing, is that because you can go to companies and they're like, oh, there's a problem hiring great people. I have a huge company full of great people. And they're like confused by that because people want to work for them. But there are endless ways. So if you don't create something that is a two-way street, something that is fun for both people, then they're going to go and do something else. They're going to go out and, find their own path. And it goes back to our very early conversation where I am as excited, if not more excited about your individual successes on this team, because I know the more successful you are, the more successful 304 and the work we do as a collective group will be. Where 30 years ago, I might have been jealous, or I might have been like, well, why are you spending your time there? You're giving them all your good ideas. You're like, I might have felt different about that if I had been, a viewpoint of, something 30, 50 years ago. Where in today's world, I have the opportunity to celebrate everyone and know that when you're creative somewhere else, you're creative when we work together. And we experienced this during our weekly touch base this week. You had created something that you recognized was really something better for my brand versus someone else's brand. But you got to something that you worked on for me through your creativity, through someone else. And that's what we want. We want ideas to come from all angles and to celebrate that.
And it's a hot topic. It's outside of what we normally write about. It is different in a way. So if you're on the mailing list, I encourage you to, because you'll get the chance to see that piece.
We're doing
all right. So I know. So if our mantra is fuck fear, and the old style of leadership, fear-based, does not work for all the reasons, even just the external chaos of how the world is a completely different place every 20 seconds. What do we do about it? How do we fix leadership?
How do we fix leadership? Well, that's a long answer. And I think what we first do, what you can do today is start working on your own fear. The more I work on myself and the more I work on my fear, the better I lead without fear. But a leader who is rooted in fear can never lead a fearless team. They just can't. Because everything is going to be based in fear. So I think that's really where it all starts, is recognizing our own fear, where it comes up. How does it show up? Fear shows up in strange ways.
Ooh, tell us how it shows up in perfectionism. Ooh. The topic of episode 1 of your podcast. Let's fix leadership.
Perfectionism is a tool of fear. Yeah, people pleasing, all of that is a tool of fear. Because if I am perfect, then I cannot fail. And so this need to be perfect constantly is this fear of getting in trouble. And I wore that as a badge of honor. Everything in my life had to be perfect all of the time. And because that's how I knew I was never going to get in trouble that way. And it made me a great employee. People loved me on their team because I did 10 times more work. I made sure it was right. I would stay up all night rereading one email instead of sleeping because I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. And so it made me a great employee. I was rewarded for it. I was rewarded for my fear, and which created more, because now that I didn't let someone down, can't let them down on Tuesday, then I certainly can't let them down on Wednesday, nor Thursday, or next month. And so I was rewarded for my fear often. And we reward people for their fear all of the time.
Well, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Okay, good.
And you're inspiring me. What's the one? What are you looking forward to? We're almost to the end of our time. What's the one? What are you looking forward to in your business? What's coming up for you that's exciting?
Oh, we are doing later this month. We're launching a leadership program for high performing executives. Actually, all of the executives for a very large organization who is about to hit massive growth. And they're going to be doing some really big things. And these are my ideal clients because they're getting in front of it. They know if they don't invest in all of their directors and vice presidents today, they're not going to have the resilience to handle what's coming for them and the growth that's coming for them. And if they can't handle it, we got bigger problems. And so this month, we kick off a 15-month program to help all of their directors and VPs work on the mindset of being a leader. And yeah, we'll work on leadership techniques and tools, but what we're really going to work on is adult development models, really maturing our thoughts, managing our fear, and staying in this place where we can handle the challenges of a fast growing organization. So yeah, so we're starting that in 2 weeks. So I'm super excited.
You know what's so cool about your work with your clients? I just realized is that, that old expression, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And like you're always part of the solution before it ever becomes a problem, which I think is very cool.
I hadn't thought of it that way. I like that. Thank you.
Yeah, I love it. We're punching up. JT, what's one question I should have asked you but didn't?
Oh, good. That's a good question about a question. Let's see. How to keep your team innovative once you've managed fear.
Oh, we'll have to save that for our next episode, unless you have a 30-second download on it.
My 30-second download is don't over direct and don't give too many directions, because what people come back with is probably better than the idea that you had in the first place.
I just saw Gary Vee speak to this, actually. It really got me in the feels, which is when you spend so much time as a boss trying to prevent client disappointment, what you miss is an opportunity where things go wrong that you can show your character and just say to the client, this is wrong. I'm sorry. I'll fix it, because that builds more trust than never making a mistake.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Good one. Where can people find you, JT? 304coaching.com.
Absolutely. And on LinkedIn and on our podcast, Let's Fix Leadership.
Exactly. Which is fire, y'all. We say, JT says a quiet part out loud, and I've learned so much every single episode. So I highly encourage folks to go and listen to that and join the mailing list and follow all the things that JT does on LinkedIn and otherwise, because she is a person of tremendous influence in my life professionally as well as personally. And it's been such a fucking honor to be a part of all of this. So I thank you for your time here today, but also for the last, 2 years of collaboration and showing me how it's done.
Well, thank you. We are all here because we're together.
We are all here because we're together. And thanks for everybody who was rocking it out in the comments. Loving this up. Let's Fix Leadership. Thank you to Tony. Thank you for Jill. Thank you to Zach. Anybody on LinkedIn who showed up, please don't stop the conversation, because the comments are still alive and well. And Saturn, Intergalactic Intern, for producing another kick-ass episode of Stone Fruit Roll Up every Thursday on LinkedIn and on YouTube. The show where you're watching the show about building the show you're watching right now. JT, thanks for giving us such an awesome Disruptor episode. I just adore you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
My pleasure. Bye, everybody.